Rules of thumb measuring. So in this presentation, we will first familiarize this topic, then we will provide information on how we did the experiment. Then next to it, we will prove the gathered data, and lastly, the results and conclusion found in this experiment or study.
Introduction to the topic. What is the rule of thumb?
It's a practical but not a precise way of estimating and measuring things. They call it rules of thumb. Well, because thumbs have been used to measure or estimate things for a long time.
Are you familiar with the movie named Gulliver's Travel? Consider this case. The 18th century novel, now known as Gulliver's Travel, was originally published with the title Travels into Several Remote Nations of the World by Lemuel Gulliver. One of the 4 voyages brought Gulliver to Lilliput, the land of tiny people, and the people were shocked and amazed by Gulliver's huge size. The Lilliputians managed to tie down Gulliver, and one of the things they do is measure him. To have a good record of the actual size of the giant in their midst, they measure around his thumb, what we might call the circumference. Then, they measure around his wrist, and they record Gulliver's wrist size as 2 thumbs round. Using the thumb as a unit of measurement was not totally made up by the authors of Gulliver's Travel, who is Jonathan Swift. There are folk saying in many parts of the world that says something like twice around the thumb, once around the wrist, or double the thumb for the wrist. People use the thumb to measure different body parts when there are no measuring tapes available. The rule of thumb size and wrist size gets extended to other body parts as well. The extensions include twice around the wrist, once around the neck. In other words, double the circumference of your wrist and you'll have the circumference of your neck. And double the circumference of your neck, you'll have the circumference of your waist.
In measuring the length of the thumb, wrist, neck, and waist, it is important that we have a measuring tape in order to measure the exact length and to compare to what is the assumed length based on rules of thumb measurements. As you can see in the first image, first thing we'll measure is the circumference of the thumb, followed by the wrist, next to is the measuring of the circumference of the neck, and lastly the circumference of the waist. For us to be able to know if the rules of the thumb is accurate, first we multiply the measurements of our thumb into 2, and then we'll have the measurement of our wrist, and then we multiply the measurement of the wrist into 2, and we'll get the measurement of the neck, and so on and so forth.
The given pictures were the measurements of our group. This is our documentation that we all participated in this project.
Measurements.
We will proceed to the data gathered by our team. Given here is the exact measurements and the assumed measurements from the rules of thumb method. As what you heard, before to get the assumed measurements of the wrist, we need to double the length of the thumb. Same goes to the other parts.
Now we are in the results and conclusion in this presentation. Here we provide the data from thumb measuring to measuring using measuring tape. As you can see, we compare the exact measurements of the participants and the assumed measurements from the use of rules of thumb. From the data we observed, it shows that the rules of thumb is not accurate method of measuring. Among the 10 participants, 9 out of 10 or 90% do not match the exact results and the assumed results. Therefore, we conclude that the rules of thumb measuring is not accurate.
And this is our team. Ali Golifardo, Rick Jan Genova, Mami Micaela Arnejo, Dylan Luis Serrano, and Mark Palanca. And that's the end of our presentation.